All right, I think it's very important to do these types of tests. This is a latitude test for the FX30. This is a cool camera in 2024. It cost me $1,598 total. In addition to that, I have a $129 plastic lens that I got from Glazers in Seattle right before I climbed to the top of Mount Rainier. Everything you see here today will have an f1 look on it because f1 doesn't mess with middle gray. The purpose for a test like this is to determine when you're in the throes of production, how much you can make a mistake or how precise you can be when you want to overexpose or underexpose. But I don't usually underexpose because bringing the footage up doesn't really look that good, but sometimes bringing the footage down looks very good. For example, on the Alexa, I very consistently shoot 2 stops over because I know that camera, like a Ghost Pepper Ranch chicken sandwich from Wendy's, I can do both with my eyes closed. So what I'm gonna do here today is make things very exact. One is being in this room with completely controlled lighting, and 2 is to use shutter speed. The reason I'm gonna use shutter speed is because it's easy and it's exact, and if you stop down the lens or change the aperture on the lens, the image will change a little bit, just in terms of depth of field. And if you use NDs, there's slight color variations, and I don't like, when looking at tests like this, to see any differences in the frame besides the difference that I'm looking for, which in this case is just how far can this be pushed up or down. So the first thing I want to do is make sure with this lighting that I can get a completely unusable clip, which I have already done. At a 180-degree shutter, the clip is very blown out, and I would never land on that even by mistake because it's so bright. So now at least I know that I can get to that, so we can definitely see how far this camera can be pushed in the overexposure department. And underexposure is easy because you can just keep narrowing the shutter angle pretty far. We're good on both areas here. The shutter that I lit this for was 1/3200th of a second. In order to test how many stops overexposed and underexposed, I'll just half or double the shutter each time. This is the overexposure portion of this. So just to be clear, this is what the scene was lit for. This is what I would land on if I was looking at the monitor like I was a couple minutes ago. And this is an image that you would not bring up or down in post at all. This is just accurately exposed for what I am doing. And the point is that we can get to way overexposed so we can find that point where the image breaks. If it can hold 6 stops overexposure, I wouldn't just haphazardly shoot 6 stops over, but I might be okay with, similarly to the Alexa, being sometimes 2 stops over, sometimes 3 stops over. If I'm missing an ND or something, I know from tests like this that I can maybe not get the 2 stops of ND if I need to roll on like a flock of birds flying through the air. I know from tests like this that I know I want 2 stops of ND, but I know that the camera can hold it, so I don't need to change any settings, and I know it would just be a fix in post. I will also do the same thing with underexposure, where we'll keep narrowing the shutter by 1 stop each time to see, oh, I have only this light, I'm a little bit underexposed, how much can I bring it up with it still looking proper? And then lastly, and I'll show you how I am doing this in Resolve, the footage you're gonna see will all be the same exposure. The shot that's 5 stops overexposed in recording will be brought down by 5 stops in DaVinci Resolve, so that each image that you look at will be effectively the same exposure. We will just see where the highlights start clipping and where the shadows start to just turn into pure noise. The exposure will all be equalized to match our accurately exposed shot that you're seeing right now. And I will show you how to do that after the test in case you want to do this on one of your cameras, or even if you want to do it on the FX30 so you can come to your own conclusions or have a different scene than this. Okay, so while we're looking at this test, I want to just tell you about audio. I use the music in my YouTube videos. I've used it on a commercial project that I worked on, a feature that they have called Link Match AI, which saves a considerable amount of time. You can paste a link from YouTube or Spotify, and it will return music that sounds similar to that song. I have many playlists of music on YouTube and on Spotify, so I can quickly recall a song, or if I know something needs to be similar to like a Taylor Swift song, for example, I can paste that song into audio and get a similar vibe. They also have sound effects. It's been great to utilize audio to help in making YouTube videos and even some commercial projects that I have worked on in post. If you click the link in my description, you can get 70% off of your first year, which is cool, so you're welcome. if you are making YouTube videos or any type of videos, could be useful for you to have. A lot of music, a lot of sound effects, and Link Match AI is a big time saver, which I enjoy. Okay, so that's the test footage. I may or may not analyze this and talk about it, but at the moment I'm feeling like I'm not gonna talk about it, and you could kind of base your conclusions just based on what you just saw. And if you have any questions about it, if I don't end up talking about it when looking at it in Resolve, feel free to let me know. And the one thing that I will repeat is that doing tests like this, whether it's for how your camera can handle different scenarios or ISO performance or whatever, even on lenses, like what's the sweet spot of a lens, what's the sweet spot of your camera. If you test all of these things out and you do it kind of methodically, similarly to this, where there's no changing light outside and I'm using shutter speed, so there's no shift in ND colors or shift in aperture, I can make conclusions that can help me when I need to think really fast and act really fast. And you kind of like get to know your camera and your lenses, and same thing with your lights. So specifically, if you want to do this test, the way to get your exposures to match in Resolve, because again, the 6-stop over clip looked like this and the regular exposure looked like this, but you saw the 6-stop exposure looking like this and the regular exposure looking like this. The way to do that is to transform your footage to Rec 709, however you may do that. If you're not doing it with F1, I don't know why, but you transform to Rec 709 and however you may do that, and you put a node before that node and you map your HDR wheels to your camera's gamma and color space. This way, if you put -1 in the global wheel, it will reduce your exposure by 1 stop, similarly to if you were to add 1 stop of ND, stop down your lens by 1 stop, or double your shutter. Plus or minus, it operates in stops when you map it to your camera's color space and gamma. So that is the way that you can match all of the exposure so you can like actually really see what's happening, if you don't just want to look at like a log image that's changing exposure each time you go up and down. The situation with the birds flying, I have been in this exact scenario. I have been waiting downtown in Soho, waiting for a bird to fly down a street. There was this moment where every once in a while a single bird would fly down the length of the street, and we had the camera looking up into the sky, just kind of on standby, and I had my boy Logan watching behind me and waiting for that bird to come. I mean, it might have been the same bird every time, but it was just like one bird that flew each time. And he would let me know when it was coming, and I would bring up the Movi and kind of like run down the street and track this bird a little bit. In a situation like that, you have no time to change your settings. You can anticipate, but if it's a partly cloudy day and clouds are moving, you can get to know just by looking at the monitor. If you have a lot of experience doing this or have a lot of experience working with one camera, you can see, yeah, I know this monitor well, I know this camera well, I can see that this is a couple stops over, but I know this camera either will handle it fine or will not handle it fine. So you either need to miss the bird or you know you can get the bird. So I think doing tests like this is valuable. I was listening to Roger Deakins and David Mullen on the recent Team Deakins podcast. They got into a little bit of like understanding technical information, and I got into a conversation about, do you have to know the technical information or not? If you are using a camera, do you have to understand it technically? You don't, but it does help in times like if you're trying to capture a bird in a partly cloudy sky. 2 other things I need to mention. If you can see my pants being ripped right here, I hope that it's not too big of a problem. And second, this video came about very quickly because I claimed a couple hours ago before dinner that if a certain comment that I left on YouTube on my friend Cody's video got a certain amount of likes, that I would post this video before sunrise. So I'll catch you on the next one. If you don't have F1, it's just kind of irresponsible.